Singers, this is the first of the play posits. I'm thinking maybe one a week. Try to make them 15, 20 minutes. Just get through the basics so you understand, have you answer some questions so I know that you're, listening, paying attention, and then that'll be it. Remember, if you want to do the essay, you can. It's not mandatory. It'll give you points, not extra credit, but points out of 100. And so if your grade is not quite at that A, B, or C, or D, and you want it to be, do the essay, and that will bring the grade up. The essay is just comparing what's going on in the book to what's going on now. So I will bring up in these play posits times things for you to think about, where some people, not everyone, thinks that a part of the book is like what's going on today. So I might just ask a question and say, well, is there anything going on today that's similar to this? And then that'll give you some ideas of where you might find quotes for the essay. Okay. So, and just to let you know, this is probably a good 20, 30 minute, video. I don't know if you can save it halfway through. So I would not proceed unless you have that amount of time, without interruption. So, all right, let's get into it again. This is just bare bones, basic stuff. Chapter 1, there's a lot going on. It's a lot of exposition. It's giving us a lot of new vocabulary words, setting, characters. So we need to just make sure everything is clear. You understand what's going on. So let's focus on that. So Big Brother is the face on these big giant posters that are everywhere, and the poster says Big Brother's watching you, and it's just a reminder. I mean, this is a perfect example of something that might be true today. Are we being watched at all times? Are we being surveilled in more ways than we know? In 1984, the book, they want it to be obvious that they're being watched. Nowadays, I think we kind of all know it, but it's not right in front of our faces, right? They try to hide the cameras, that kind of thing. Here in this world, it's like, hey, we're watching you. This big giant face is watching you right now, even though it can't because it's just a big giant face. He's also the leader of, the country. Does he actually exist? Is he a real person? Who knows, right? And this idea of Big Brother, someone that's going to protect you. It's the, protective older brother sort of thing. Okay, Ingsoc is English socialism. It's it's like Democratic Party or Republican Party. This is the English Socialist Party. It's the governing party. It's basically totalitarianism, right? It's just they control everything that goes on completely, like 100%. We'll get into that more as we go. London, Airstrip 1, Oceania. London's the city. Airstrip 1 is like the province. And then Oceania, essentially, there's only three big super states left in the world, right? Apparently, according to the book, is Oceania, which is where they live, and then East Asia and Eurasia. So it's just showing that, countries are taking over, and it's so much that now there's only three countries left, these giant superpowers. Is that something that's happening? I don't know. Colonization, it's still going on today, but it's certainly not as much as it used to. But this one's debatable. Okay, so it gives us a description of the city. Everything's like dusty and broken down and just awful. But in the midst of all that, there's four giant buildings that kind of just are far and above, higher than anything else, more distinct that you can see in the city. It's the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Peace, the Ministry of Love, and the Ministry of Plenty. Ministry of Truth is in charge of news, entertainment, education, fine arts. So the government completely 100% controls the information that people get. There's no independent, news channels or education or entertainment or whatever. It's all run by the government. The Ministry of Peace is in charge of war, so you have very ironic names to try to mess with your brain, right? Like, oh no, yeah, we're in charge of war, but we're really here to create peace. That's why we go to war. Um, uh, Ministry of Love is in charge of law and order. That's the scary building that has no windows. It's the prison, right? There's like barbed wire fence everywhere. And then the Ministry of Plenty, which is economic affairs. Oh, everything's great. You have lots and lots of money. Oh, I should also mention, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm just going to mention it here since I forgot. If I ask a question and you're not sure, you can rewind. You can't go forward, you can't skip questions, but you can certainly go backwards. I made that possible as one of the options. So feel free to do that if you need to. You can also change the speed. If I'm talking too fast, just make it slower. If you want to get through this quicker, just put it at like double speed or something. If that's even possible for you to understand, because I talk pretty fast because I'm trying to get through it quick. Anyway, all right. This victory gin, um, I mean, they're drinking. We haven't gotten to. This is a review of chapters 1 through 4. You'll see the victory gin again in chapter 5. They drink it at work. Um, it's everywhere. But to me, it's just another form of control. When people are intoxicated, they're oftentimes, not always, but less likely to worry about things, to get upset about things. They're just kind of more relaxed, takes the edge off, right? It's super cheap. Gin is like one of the cheapest hard alcohols you can produce. It tastes awful, but it's just to control the population, I think. So they almost insist that everybody is an alcoholic, right? It also weakens your body, right? So that's another form of control. If you're drinking all the time, your body is not healthy. Um, okay, so then we get into Winston's diary, and it's like, why is this such a illegal thing, right? You're not allowed to write in a diary. Well, they don't want people. Diaries are designed to get you to think introspectively, to get you to think about just life and things that are unjust, and they don't want you thinking about any of that. They want you absolutely controlled at all times. They want to control your thoughts. And if you're writing in a diary, they can't control your thoughts. You're allowed to think for yourself. That's what writing in a diary does. So I wanted that to be clear about why that is such an illegal thing for him to do. Um, so he's trying to think of different things to write down. He talks about going to the movies with the pearls. We'll get into the pearls later. I decided to skip that for now. And then he talks about work, an incident at work. And there's a few people he mentions. One is the dark-haired girl. We'll learn her name later. But she is part of the, what do they call it? The anti-sex league. And she's just an example of how they're controlling all emotions, right? Sexuality is like not allowed. They have, and she's dark haired girl. She's a woman, but younger woman. That's just how she's described. But they have clubs for younger women where they just, vow to like chastity and swear off, sexuality and all this. And because sexuality is a very, very, very strong emotion. And the party wants, or Big Brother wants to wipe that out completely. They don't want anyone to have these strong emotions because strong emotions lead to rebellion and overthrow and that kind of thing. So, and all this does, this sexual repression makes it even worse. There's a fantasy that he has about her that I'm not going to mention, um, because it's very detailed, but it makes him into a psychopath, that not being able to have a way to express his sexual desires. There'll be more about her later, but just wanted to mention her. And then O'Brien is the guy with the glasses, and he thinks he might be possibly kind of a spy, uh, someone that's against Big Brother, because it gives him this look, this very human look. He's like, oh, and Winston kind of reads into it. So we'll get into that more later too. And then there's this strange activity that they do at work, by the way, where everyone has to stop what they're doing. Every day they go to the screen and they're watching the screen, and it shows their enemy, which is Manuel Goldstein. Um, and all this propaganda and these different images that are going on, and they're making him look a certain way. It's so evil and awful. And there's this horrible noise in the background and all this stuff, and it's supposed to just inspire hatred. And the idea, this one really, I think, can be connected to modern day. It's a scapegoat, right? We have to have an enemy. You have to have someone to blame if people, because that's the kind of emotion that they want people of that time to be focused on, just hatred of someone else. Because if you're hating someone else, then you're not hating Big Brother, right? So, does this exist today? If you're going to write the essay, are people still scapegoated? Are there people in governments, whether it be the United States or other countries, that use propaganda to try to make its citizens hate certain groups of people in order so that people don't pay attention to um, some horrible things that are happening within that country? I don't know. You tell me. So in this case, it's Emmanuel Goldstein. Uh, and it's interesting. It talks about how, you know, he's so hated and he's so awful. And yet somehow this country that controls every single thing on the planet, they can't catch him. He's always out there. So the question that comes up is he even real, or have they used this person in order, as a scapegoat to get people hating him, but he doesn't even exist, right? And they always talk about how, there's all these people that are working for him and all these things. Without proof, does he even exist? I don't know. We'll find out. Well, or will we? The Brotherhood supposedly is a secret organization led by Manuel Goldstein that is against Big Brother. Um, the book is this manual that exists that kind of helps people. It's for the Brotherhood, uh, know how to rebel against the party, essentially. Um, we're coming back to that one. Yeah, sorry, that was supposed to be in a different presentation. Uh, then, towards the end of the chapter, as he finishes writing his diary, he talks about how people are caught. It's by the thought police, right? When you commit a thought crime, basically, you're not allowed to think anything that Big Brother wouldn't want you to think. And somehow they can even read your face, right? If your face is not looking the way it should, then that's a face crime. They can arrest you. If you're thinking something you shouldn't, somehow they can figure out exactly what you're thinking. We're going to find out more about that later. So just like, how is that possible? You'll see. Okay, so that was a long one. Chapters 2, 3, and 4 will be shorter. But that's the basics. That sets up, uh, the whole setting, right? Really. Okay, so the main part two, chapter 2, is all about when Winston goes to Mrs. Parsons' house to fix her, sink, and oh, it's those kids. They're just insane, right? They're completely brainwashed. You can tell. Even their own parents are afraid of them. They're afraid that they're going to turn them in as um, having committing thought crimes or something to that effect. So the question is, are kids brainwashed in any way? If not by the government, by someone. Is going to school just a way for uh, people to control you? I don't. Is the lesson that you learn at school not really algebra or English, but it's really just sit down and be a good person, be a controlled person, right? I don't. You tell me. So that's. But man, those kids are scary. Um, it briefly mentions a dream. This is important later on, so I wanted to bring this up. Where he is talking to O'Brien, and he says, "We shall meet in the place where there is no darkness." Um, Dreams are part of your subconscious, so if the party controls everything, are they somehow feeding these thoughts into his mind so that he dreams about them? I don't know, but this will come up later. And then at the very, very end of the chapter is the last thing I want to talk about, chapter 2. There's this big victory in India, and then the very next thing it says is, oh, by the way, chocolate rations are going down, reduced. You have less chocolate to eat. Well, that's interesting. The announcement is, here's something great that happened that you should be happy about. Yay! And by the way, sorry, we need to, take something away from you. Well, I think the idea is, if you're so happy that you've won a victory, then, oh, well, that's, what, I am willing to do this for the cause. I can give up some chocolate, because we're doing a good job. We are winning the battle. This is total mind control, right? There's no, and Winston, says that he knew this was coming. As soon as they say a victory, this happens every time, because they're constantly trying to control, the population. Okay, chapter 3. It's a little more abstract. It kind of jumps around a little bit, but there's a big part about Winston's mother and sister. Basically, they died. We'll find out more about that later. Many, many years ago, when he was very young, they disappeared in the war. And he says, this dream that he has about them was something that doesn't exist anymore. The only emotions that exist are fear, hatred, and pain. He says this dignity of emotion, these deep and complex sorrows that he has when he thinks about his mother, don't exist. So that's important. It tells us how much of an effect the party, or sorry, Big Brother is having on the party and the society. So my question is, is that still true? Do we, if you look at the emotions that are expressed in popular culture and people yelling at each other and hating each other, is it pretty much just fear, hatred, and pain? Or, are complex sorrows not part of the mainstream anymore? Is that trying to be taken away from us? I don't know. You tell me. If you think it is, write an essay about it. Okay. And then okay, I already mentioned this one from the previous chapter, but this is where he has that dream of the dark-haired girl. Oh no, this is a different dream. Sorry. This is where he dreams that she just rips her clothes off, right? And what's interesting about that is he's not even interested in the sexuality of it, the sexual part of it. It's just the idea that she could even do that, right? That gesture of just, I am going to be a sexual person. I am going to, just rip my clothes off and show myself as having these kind of passions and emotions. He's like, she could destroy the whole civilization if we were even able to do that. So that, it really shows just how much they've taken away. People can't express any kind of passion or emotions in this society. Is that still true today? Are people trying to take it away? They want us to just sit at home and watch Netflix and be, totally emotionless, not talk to people anymore. We have these phones and these, I know I sound like an old person, but social media and all this where, the deep personal connections maybe aren't what they used to be. Is that happening today? If it is, write an essay about it. Okay. So then he's watching his telescreen, which, by the way, is in every room of every house. And they're constantly watching you all the time. And we find out at the end of the physical jerks, which is just, some lady comes on and says, do these exercises. She can actually see him because she's specifically talking to him in the video screen. And as far as the exercise goes, again, this is just more control. This is very reminiscent of military. You wake up, you're forced to do this regimen. And you combine that with the poor health they're in and the alcohol they're drinking is not a good combination. Okay, and then this is really important. I think this is towards the end of chapter 3. It's the last thing in chapter 3. Is this idea of doublethink, and it's somewhat complex and difficult to explain. But the idea is The party wants you to believe, Big Brother wants you to believe whatever it says is true. So they purposely say things that are totally contradictory, but insist that they're true. And so, for example, the party invented airplanes, but airplanes existed before the party. So you have to believe those two things at the exact same time all the time. Because when it's convenient for the party to be able to say they invented airplanes, then your brain has to go, yes, they invented airplanes. But if there's something in the history books that talks about airplanes before the party existed, then your brain has to go, oh yeah, of course, that makes sense too. Where if you think about it, that can't exist. That's not possible, right? Democracy is impossible, but the party is the guardian of democracy. We want you to think that there's no possible way to have democracy, so don't even try it. But we also want you to think that Big Brother is so awesome because they guard democracy at all times. So it's basically the government just wants you to believe everything it says, no matter if it contradicts itself all the time. That is one that, if you want to, you can talk about how any government, I don't care if it's this one, the one we live in, or other countries, do this to their citizens. Okay. Okay. Chapter 4, last one, quick and easy. This one's about work, and actually, I think I only have one thing to say about this. So, what does Winston do for a living? He rewrites history, and not just history, like current history. So, if there's someone who the party has disappeared, right? They've vaporized, they've erased from existence. He has to go in and find every single example of that person that's been in, like, the news, and he has to completely change it, either erase it, or uh, this one guy, we've got Ogilvy and Withers as the example in chapter 4, and this guy that's been, is a traitor, but he won an award. So he has to make up someone that doesn't exist and say, oh no, that was the person who got the award, not this other guy. That guy doesn't exist. I don't even know who that is. Who is that? And so here he is, changing history. Know that he's changing history. He's doing something where he's absolutely aware that nothing anybody says is real, right? Uh, is this happening today? Are there people that just basically deny things that historically happened? And they come up with all these theories, and they come up with all these ways and ideas and things. Does the truth even exist anymore? That's the question. When this book was written in the 40s, 48, I believe, uh, he was predicting that this stuff would happen. And now I think a lot of these things, and some people would argue against it, and that's fine. You can argue against it, and you can say, no, it's not happening. You're a conspiracy theorist, Mr. Kramer. That's fine. But it's pretty incredible. Like, some of these things where you go, wow, I wouldn't have agreed with that 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But all of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, we got deep fakes where you can basically make anyone say anything or do anything, right? Put their face on someone else's video. Oh yeah, I got a video of it. You did that, or you said that. You could be using this video right now to change my, make me say whatever I want, or whatever you want. Are we living in a time where, like Winston, he's changing history? You can create whatever reality you want. It's quite frightening. Um, that's pretty much it. And I have no idea how long that was, but that's a lot shorter than my freshman videos. I go on for hours and hours. So I hope that you get the basics of the story, you understand what's going on, and you answer the questions correctly, because they are worth points. So, uh, all right, thank you. I'll see you in the next video.